This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone, good evening. So we'll start with today's session. We'll just wait for a couple of more minutes for everyone to join in and then we'll start the session. Hi everyone, hope you're able to hear me. So, so if you can just respond on that, so I just take it as a yes. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes, can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So let us start with today's session. So as we have planned out, so from today we are starting with our technical course. When we are starting our course, so we remember each sessions will be recorded and we'll be having the sessions for close to an hour or maybe more than that, or sometimes maybe less than that. And if we are skipping any classes, those classes will be taken later. And if over the weekend we are taking any classes, that I'll inform you all prior to the class, maybe 2-3 days back, so that we can schedule a time. Now, the course structure is basically, as I explained, it will be starting from the basic architecture, then we'll be going more into the different sections of Dynamics 365, and from after 2 days, we'll be starting with the basic data type, then we'll moving into the data structure, which are the core building blocks. So I can say the first few days will be more into the very basic understanding of the elements, what we need to do, what we basically require to work on a day-to-day basis, and then we'll be moving on to the complex data structure, our tables, query, views, and then we'll be moving on to the code part. So this is how we have designed the course. And now, as so all of you are joining, and I would expect all of you to just take part in the course. And it would be recommended that you can just take notes, and I'll also provide you some training materials or documents, and also you can refer to the videos later. So today we'll start with the our technical architecture of Microsoft Dynamics, and then we'll be moving on to the from tomorrow, as and I explained you that every day whenever we are starting with our course, I'll be just explaining you what you can expect from tomorrow. So today will be the basic architecture, introduction to Dynamics 365 FNO. All these things we'll be covering, how the server architecture, everything works. So today will be just a session just to give you a feel about the product, and then we'll be from tomorrow we'll be moving on to the actual Visual Studio where we go and work, and where we can go and see the different procedures of how we can go and customize our product. So those things we'll be covering starting from tomorrow. So now let us go and straight away jump into the architecture. So give me a minute, I just share my screen. So before starting on to the course, I just take questions if you have any. If you have any doubts on the course contained anything, I think I have already explained those in our sessions, in our demo sessions. But if you have any, if you can have those questions thrown at me now, so you'll have like couple of minutes for that. So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead. Okay, I take that as a no, and let us start with the architecture part. So let me share. Okay, so Dynamics 365 as an ERP, so it has a three-layer of architecture. So let me explain that. So okay, so I think this one we have already discussed how the product or the FO architecture looks like. Correct? We have already discussed on that. I'll not spend more time on that. It is just I'll spend a couple of minutes. Whoever has not followed the demo sessions. So the right now Microsoft has a common stack for all the Microsoft Office 365 products, and that is why they have named it as Dynamics 365 to have a correlation with the Office 365, because 90% of the global clients they use Microsoft Office for their day-to-day emailing, chat, and all those messenger services. So if they are going for any other services, further application, business applications, they can use the same name. So now our everything architecture, everything starts with our Windows Server directory. So if someone is already having a Dynamics Office 365 license and they are maintaining that in their Windows Server Active Directory, they just need to move everything to the Azure Active Directory, or what we call as AAD, which is Azure Active Directory, the short form. So once that is being migrated to AAD, then you have to give the users access from the Office 365 admin portal, and then we have to once that is created, you have the proper permissions given to all the users. You can go and access all the different applications of Microsoft Dynamics based on the uh, requirement and based on the licenses you have procured. So whenever we brought buy a license for Dynamics 365, by default we get this thing access for this thing, which is the lifecycle services, and which is basically responsible for managing all your environments. So when I say environments, I mean we have our development environment, we have our test environment, and production. So all this environment right now is actually being managed, configured, all those things maintained by Microsoft, because we do not have any control in it, because those are hosted in cloud. But still the environment upgrade, policies, everything, all those things are still in our hands. We can just go log into LCS and we can simply use those services. So any upgrade to the environment, any code deployment, all those things needs to be done through LCS. So we'll have the session on LCS later. We'll have a discussion, because I believe that is still, I would say, not directly part of the technical course, but it is good to know how we can go and use the LCS to manage our environments, how we can do the code deployment. So all those things we'll learn later. Anyways, now coming back to the applications, once we have our credentials set, then we are good, and then we can just simply use our finance and operations app, right? And we also have the VSTS, or what we call a DevOps, to manage our task, to create the release pipeline, build pipeline. All these things we can go and use. Now, coming back to the Dynamics 365 ERP architecture from a basic level. Now, if I just go and write it, I'll just say it has a three-layer architecture. Okay, so to simply put it, the first layer will be, let's say, first layer, and we have a second layer, and we have a third layer. So this is a three-layer architecture what we are talking about. I'll explain each of the layer and how those layers are interacting with each other. So first layer is basically, or I'll just start from the bottom. So the bottom layer, or what we call as the first layer, is basically the development environment, or not environment. It's basically the database. And to put it simply, the second layer is, I'll come to that later, is basically application server, and the third layer is client or UI. Okay. Now, what do I mean by each of one of them, and how it is being, everything is being configured? So, so excuse me. So the client layer or the UI layer will start from this, from the top layer, because this is the application that everyone is using. So whenever you are using the application, the Dynamics 365 as an ERP, you see this part, which is or what we call as the front end, where you can go create an order, create a customer account, maybe create some entries. All these things you can do from here. Now, whenever you creating an order, you creating some data, that means this database should be activated, correct? Because if I am able to create an order, then the data should be stored somewhere, right? And this is the database layer, and this is the bottom layer. But this data doesn't go directly from here to here, it goes to the application server. So application server, or what we call as AOS, application object server, is nothing but where our metadata, our code, and all the business logic resides. That means this layer is interacting with this layer, and then after that the data is getting written to the database. So that means, so today if you have in the front end, in the UI, you have a button which calls new customer. So you click that button. When you click that button, there is some code is written which runs some validations based on the data, which can create some input material for you, and then the data is actually getting written to the database. So that is why this application object server AOS is basically important, or is a fundamental layer where your business logic is written, and which actually runs the application. So this is the UI layer, which actually is the front end, or where you do the interaction with the ERP. And this UI is actually connecting to the application object server, and all our business logic and metadata is residing here. And then after this application object server or business logic is run, then the data is getting written to the database layer. Fine. So this is how the three-layer architecture works. Now, if we just go back to the slide, I just prepared something. So now let us discuss this. So if you see, this is server architecture, and this is a very common diagram. This is, I think, we have taken from Microsoft official website also. I'll explain each of the terms, but just to give you an understanding on that, this is basically explaining how this three-layer architecture is working. So we have the data access layer, or what we call as the database. Here, the data access layer, we can have a regular database, and okay, just to clear this out, for Microsoft Dynamics 365, the database is SQL Server. So Microsoft SQL Server is the database for storing all the data. So that is the primary database. So if you have a SQL knowledge, that will be excellent, and that you can get many help out of it. Now, coming back to the data access layer and the database, here you have a, by default you have a SQL Server database, but Sometimes it can happen, maybe some you have another database which is not SQL Server, but for some application you are using a maybe SQL Server, but in that case you want to connect to the our existing SQL database. So you can have create an aggregated data store where might be 2-3 database or 2-3 applications are getting connected and using as a database, right? So that can also happen, and that is why you can see the data aggregated data store. But on a broad level, on a like just to understand simply, the database is basically our Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, and that is the bottom layer. Now coming back to this layer, this is, as I explained, this is where our all objects lies in. So we have our metadata. Metadata is nothing but all the objects or whatever we work on, our table, our data types, our code base, uh, anything which you are applying, our reports, all those report objects, all those things are called metadata. So I'll come to that later, but this is what we call as a metadata. And also our there are some aspects for security, batch processes, workflows, all those engines, everything is like in the application object server layer, which is the second layer. And this is the top layer, or which is called as user interaction layer, where you can see the interface, which is what we call as form. So from Dynamics point of view, the interface layer where the users go and see everything, perform some operation, is called form. So that is why you are seeing this as a form engine. And also you have our interaction layer where we are report, MVC services, and all those things are there. So those things are more complex. I'll not go to that layer, but once we go deep dive into the different sections, we'll learn more on that. And also for OData endpoint, if we are connecting through some Salesforce or some dynamic CRM application through OData, then we need to use a OData endpoint also. So that is also coming into our top layer. So this is why how our 3-layer architecture is being used in Microsoft Dynamics, where the bottom layer is actually storing the data database, then our application object server where we are running our business logic, and then the top layer, which is our layer which is actually using the helping the users to see everything and perform the operations, which is called the user UI or user interface layer. Now if we are good with the server architecture, how Microsoft Dynamics is built, so now let us go back to something called as application stack. Now if you see this application stack, this I'll take the questions later. WCF is a web service framework which is being used to create the web services. WCF, WPF, those services, those are actually currently used, not being used, but we are using the directly .NET applications. But this is being written because this is just from the basic preliminary server architecture. Anyways, if you are going to the application stack, here we have seen these three architecture. This is not exactly the like 1 2 3 layer. This is not exactly that. Don't relate, try to relate this with the previous diagram. Okay, so this diagram and this diagram exactly not. So if you are seeing 3 blocks, it's not exactly like this, a bottom layer and this is the top layer. It's not like that. So application stack is nothing but how our metadata, everything is stored on which layer. So for Microsoft Dynamics, if the concept is basically when you do a customization, everything is basically related to models. I will explain that later, but everything is related to models, and all these names whatever you are seeing, these are basically models. Okay, so our application suite, a number sequences, organization model, everything is all these things are models. And also the in the application platform we have our all these SSIS reporting, workflow framework, all these things are there. So once I show you the product, you will be able to understand more, and I'll also deep dive into the concept of model extension tomorrow, but I'll touch base on that today also. But just remember that we everything is based on model, and the models are right now is a kind of a folder structure. Okay, so this is what we call as application stack. Okay, and this again I said like this is how the server architecture. Yes, so one crucial point is for cloud, I'll just write it. I think that would be easier for you to understand. Okay, so when I say about cloud, so I think it's a shared services, right? So it is not that we have to maintain, manage all the resources, everything. So in the cloud, whoever is the cloud service provider, they are managing the resources for you. Correct? On here, Microsoft is providing the cloud and what is called as Azure, Microsoft Azure Cloud, and that Azure is basically providing you all the infrastructure, everything. Now, whenever you are building something on cloud or you are actually using something from cloud, here we are using something from cloud, right? Because the application is already there, it is hosted on cloud and we are using that, correct? So there are three methodologies how we can, and that is very basic, and if someone has some knowledge on cloud, he must have known that. So there are three methodologies and you might have heard those terms also, but I just write those down also for your understanding. So first is called SAS. Second is PAS. I think this should write in small. And okay, so yeah, what are these three? So this is software as a service, this is platform as a service, and this is infrastructure as a service. So there is a very basic differentiation between each of them. Software as a service, you know that if we are buying something and Microsoft is providing everything to you, and they are also providing you the inbuilt software. You are just logging in and started using that software application. So in that case, you are just paying for the software use, and that is what we call as a software as a service. Platform as a service, where Microsoft is just providing the cloud, and in that you have a virtual machine, and then that on that platform you are building your own application, you are building your own objects, and then you can host that over and deploy that to the cloud. So that is a platform as a service because you are only using the service of the platform. And infrastructure as a service is nothing but where you are using all the complete infrastructure of Microsoft Cloud, which is Azure, and on top of that, you are building your application, and then you are using that. So there is a common misconception that this Dynamics 365 as is a software we are just using as a software as a service or as a SaaS, but actually it is not. This is a IaaS, or it is a infrastructure as a service we are using for that purpose. So what happens is, so this application we are using, like the Visual Studio is our development environment. So there we are doing all our changes, customization, we are writing our code, writing all the things, we are creating our tables and everything on that. Then after that, when we build that after the build is nothing but the compilation. So once you do the compilation, everything is deployed, and once we deploy that, it is being hosted through to the cloud through what we call as IIS, or in information internet information services. So it is through IIS it is being deployed to the cloud, and that is the methodology which is called IIS is being used by Microsoft Dynamics, right? So this is from, as I said, in the cloud. So once we are deploying that application, our code base, it is deployed to the IIS web application, and then we are using deployed to Azure infrastructure as a service. So this is how the structure looks like. Now, coming back to the survey, okay, this is model and XML artifacts. All this I'll just explain in a bit. I think this one we can, yeah. So these again, these are it's a basic diagram. So as I explained in that diagram also, so lifecycle services or the lifecycle services is the most important thing. If you remember here, I told you like lifecycle services. It is a portal which is actually important for managing all our environments, and on top of that we have our applications of finance and operations, which is the ERP, which we are going to learn. And if you have a CRM and all those things, then also we can use that. But so just remember, lifecycle services, Dynamics AX is nothing but Dynamics 365. And also if we have any shared services like Dev or DevOps and all those things, that also can be used in the cloud. Now, if this is clear, if you have any questions, you can just ask me, then I'll just go to this part, which is important, how the model and uh, XML artifacts, everything is built. So I'll just take up questions now if you have any questions regarding the points which we discussed now.
Hello,
Yes, go ahead.
sir. I'm not understanding the terminologies what you are saying.
Okay, so what you are not exactly understanding, so the terminologies which I am using, or the ERP concept which we discussed.
Yes, yes, the ERP concept I'm not able to understand.
Have you attended the demo class?
Yes, sir. I attended the demo class that day.
Mhm.
Uh, but I am understanding what you're saying. But the basic terminologies which are used in Microsoft Dynamics,
Mhm.
uh, that I'm not able to understand, get it properly.
We haven't started on that actually. So as of now, what we have understood or what we have actually discussed is a, three-layer architecture. Correct? How Microsoft Dynamics as a framework is built, how the server architecture is built. That part we have discussed, and the rest of
Okay.
the parts, and yeah, the rest of the parts we haven't discussed much. Now we are going to discuss more on the how the data structure, I mean, the model concept and everything, how everything is stored, how Dynamics 365 as a product, all these things I'll show you now. But as of now, just for your understanding, we have just discussed on the architecture part, on the server architecture part, which shows you how Microsoft Dynamics is built as a product.
Okay, okay, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so if yeah, just one thing, just I would like to highlight that try to make this session as interactive as possible. I would like that. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask me so that I can also discuss some of the business cases with you if you have interest. I'll just give you some examples from with my experience so that it can help you to understand what actually you can expect from Microsoft Dynamics as a product, and what kind of problem or scenarios which comes along with the product, right? So I'm just opening it. Give me a minute.
Yeah, you had shared the modules, right? Application layer and then application
Yeah.
suite and some other.
Can you just repeat that again?
You had shared the application layer and application suite and like folder structure is there. You said right. Uh,
Yeah,
uh, 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 any
I
any
haven't
object.
discussed on that actually. I discussed on it now.
Okay, fine, sure. Then okay.
Yeah, I just told you that is there, but I just discussed on it now. So I haven't done that yet. Okay, so let me share my screen and I'll just show you so the product and how it looks like, what you can expect. So, okay, so this is the Microsoft Dynamics 365 ERP, Finance and Operations. So, if you see this, just give me a moment. Yeah, as I was explaining, right? So, This is a product, Microsoft Dynamics 365 ERP, and this is a standard demo data what we have. Now coming back to it, this is an ERP, and if we want a starting point, this is the home page, and you have sections like these are the different modules it has. Like here, just ignore these things, and right now just concentrate on the modules. So we have this many modules, and there are so many different modules Microsoft has introduced. So how a project works or how the project life cycle works. So if we identified, okay, tomorrow maybe we are going to a retail company, correct, who are into distribution industry. By distribution I mean they are not manufacturing something, they are just getting trading some items. So let's say right now most of the manufacturers of electronics items, right, in India, what they do, they like previously, like few years back also, they did not have any manufacturing facility in India. Like I can give you an example, like boat, we all use boat earphones, so we see ad, right, boat earphones, or uh, all those company, Bolt Audio, all those companies that they did not have any manufacturing facility in India, or maybe some packaging facility, not manufacturing. So what they used to do is just get the product from China as a trading item. So they get those electronics, everything. They do the branding here in India, and then they sell it across the country, across India. So that was the product. Everything was manufactured in China. It was not. But right now they have started, but previously it was not. So they are kind of a distributing company or trading company. So if we go and understand, okay, they want to implement the ERP. So if there are so many different modules are there, so what do you think they will be interested in? They will be interested in definitely the inventory part, because they are getting so many items across the border, how the inventory will be stored, they have a warehousing system, all those things they will be interested in. They will be interested in the accounts payable, or what we call as vendor management, purchase order, and also they will be interested in the sales process, correct, because they are selling those items. Manufacturing facility, planning facility, they will not be interested to implement that because they do not have any business in those modules, correct. So that is why they will be maybe interested in sales process, purchases, inventory, finance, definitely all these modules they will be interesting. So right now if you see from the left hand side, all these modules are actually, so one of the modules if you see maybe is pertaining to some of the features of Dynamics 365. So asset management, asset leasing is something related to their fixed asset, or which can be termed to as a kind of a finance thing. Here payable, receivable is basically, this is your purchase management and this is the sales management, correct. So if you talk about a trading company, they will be definitely be interested in that, implementing those two. Cash and bank is something every company has a bank account management, they will be interested in that. And if related to finance, the general ledger, credit collection, cost account, all these different things are there. Now the projects, when there's a project life cycle is like that. So once we identify the company, identify their business, what they are actually looking into, we identify which are the things are the focus areas, right. Maybe purchasing, sales, and inventory are the focus areas. Then we identify that, okay, these modules will be involved, and then we go as a functional consultant or as a business consultant, go discuss their process, understand their process, and try to map with the Dynamics 365 product. So any ERP project, we already have a built-in product, right? This is a self-sufficient product. If we want to use it, we can, from tomorrow onwards, we can go and start using it. Yeah, no one is stopping us. But any business process, whenever we are understanding this, it is not necessary the business process will be exactly similar to what is defined in Dynamics 365. As an example, so for both, maybe they have their purchasing process involve 5 different steps, and in Dynamics 365 the purchasing process involves 3 different steps. So we understood there is a gap of 2 steps, correct. So what will be the recommended process? Do we suggest that both should change their process and they should start purchasing in three different steps, or should we customize the product in a way so that their business process is captured in Dynamics 365? The answer is the latter. We should customize the Dynamics 365 product in a way which captures their business process, so that we have to customize those two processes which are not actually included in the purchasing module of Dynamics 365. Similarly, we do that for all the modules. Once that those gap is identified, we understood what needs to be done, how we have to do the customizations. Once those processes are defined, then the development team, or I would say the solution architect from the development side comes in. They understand the process, they know what needs to be done, and then as a developer, we come in and we start our work. Correct, because the process, the change is identified, we know what to do, and then we go and simply identify, okay, this is a process that needs to be changed. Maybe I need to create 3 buttons, and against those 3 buttons I need to write some business logic. And whoever has done the business understanding functional person, they will tell you, okay, this is the current process and this is what should happen when you click this button. Correct, and then you write your code. Now, if I go and see this, let me just go and see this account payable, and if we go to purchase orders, so this is the UI basically. I was telling you about 3 layers, correct? So this is the client interface of the UI layer, where we are actually interacting with the interface, and this is where the user comes in and they use the product like this. So this has a demo data and it's like running on the, so it might be slow. Okay. Now you see these are the list of the purchase orders which is already there in the system, and we can see there's a lot of data, right? And this is like easy to understand because this is like in Excel, right? These are the like column headers, right? Top column, and these are the data, all like Excel like this. And at the top there are so many different buttons are there, actions are there, purchase order, manage, receive, invoice, warehouse, transportation, everything is there, correct? Now let us open any one of them. Click on this hyperlink and it gets opened. And here I can see there's a header line, all these things. If you do not understand this, that is fine. I don't expect you to understand, but this is from the data point of view. And I can see there are a lot of fields, like each line has different sections, general setup, address, delivery, price and discount, project, all these different sections are there. A lot of data fields are there, correct? So when as a functional consultant I tell you, okay, you are a developer, I need you to develop this, and here you have to add 2 more buttons, and if I click those buttons, there should be some operations happening and there's some validation, business logic should run, right? This is what we expect from the client layer or the UI layer, right? Or the rather the users should expect that this should happen. Now, as a developer, where we go and write the logic, we write in the application AOS layer, right? What we call, what we understand before is the second layer, and that is the part where comes in the Visual Studio. This is our development area. Right, this is the Visual Studio, and as I explained, this is not the regular Visual Studio. Like if you have Visual Studio in your local machine and you can just start using this, you will not be able to, because this is a specific Visual Studio which has this dynamic 365 applications and everything, correct? And here I can see all the objects and everything listed there, and this is the place where you can just find each one of those objects. So this is a form, right? I told you this is what we call as a form. So if you right click, you will understand there's a form name is called purge table, correct? And then once you know this, then you can go to this application object space, and here you can just find the user interface and find the form which is called purge table. Let's find out that, right? And this is a patch table form, and this patch table form, if I ask you to do some changes, you have to find this form and do all the changes based, and also at the back end there will be database and all those complicated things, correct? So this is how these two layers are interacting with each other. This is my layer, which is the first layer of the UI layer, and this is my this is not a layer basically. This is the, I mean, I would say the development space. That is why I'm showing you. But again, I mean, if you just think this as a layer, it's not exactly layer, but this is the space where you are writing the our business logics, right? And the bottom layer, which is called the database. Now, once you see open this patch table, um, if you go and expand this, if you expand the data sources, there's a hell lot of data sources. Okay, this is not only one table or something. Data sources even nothing but tables, right? So just if you do not understand, still fine, but just remember these are basically tables where you store the data. It all these data sources are in one form because there's so many data sources are involved, correct? So now if we see feel that this is a basically table, I told you, right? So this table you should find in the SQL server, because that is how you are storing the data. I told you, right? Three layers, and the bottom layer should store the data. So if you go to the SQL server, which is this part, and here there are databases. Now if you go to this database, which is called our, if you expand this, you will find there's something called as AXDB, correct? And if you expand this, you will find the tables. If you expand this too, you will find dbo.parch table maybe. Yeah, here it was there somewhere. Yeah, dbo.parch table or parch acquisition. Yeah, I think parch acquisition. Okay. Yeah, this is called the parch table. Where is it? Yeah, this is the parch table. So this is actually at the backend, or what we call as in the database. This is where the data is getting stored, right, from the SQL server. So this is how the three layers are interacting. But this is from the application side. I hope this is clear. Now coming back to the folder structure and the model and everything. So previously, what happened in the older versions, when we discussed that the older versions, right? When we discussed on the demo, that was a Windows-based application, so it was not hosted in cloud. So the objects are actually stored into your local machine, correct? And then you should have like deployed everything to another machine, and then you could have run the application. So right now, as this is hosted in cloud, all the objects are not actually stored as a Microsoft Dynamics object, it's stored as a XML object. So this patch table, patch line table, or patch table form, all these things are not exactly, I mean, these objects are stored as a XML object and in a model. So the model structure is nothing but right now Microsoft Dynamics. So let me explain that. So everything starts with model. So whenever we try to create something, everything is called as a model. So when I say model, models are nothing but to understand easily are folders. Okay, folders, and in those folders your objects are being stored as a XML object. Now coming back to the structure, if I go into the folder, so if you go to any object here, you will see at there is a bracket which is written like this, which is called an application suite. So this is the model name, and in that model, this patch table, this patch summary parameters, all these objects are stored. How do we know that? Let us go and identify this. So if you go to this my computer, and there is some C drive, and here you will find something called as AOS service. Okay, here you have a AOS service. Under AOS service, you will find all these different package local directory. So under package local directory, here you are seeing all these models. As I told you, these are nothing but folders, correct? So this model application suite is a folder. There's another model called, okay, let me show you this. Yeah, so there are this many models are available currently, okay, in the product itself, and this many folders are available here also. So there is this many models are there available, right? And this many folders are available, and under each model, if you go and deep dive into it, you will find this different objects, right? Your let's say if you go to this descriptor file, and you see there are this textbook, SCM controls, foundation, all these XML documents are there, and under this you will find the you'll find the name of the objects, what are the available objects. See, all these are different objects and different things are there, right? So this is how this folder structure and everything looks like. If I feel that it might be a bit complex for the day one, but just to understand and just to get something out of the from today's session, is that just remember that I'll be discussing on this tomorrow also, on the how the model and everything looks like. But to discuss more on that, or just to have a good understanding on it, just remember, for Dynamics 365, everything, all the objects, everything is stored in models, and these models are containing all the objects as an XML object. So this is the core idea which you should bring with you after the class. Correct. So this is how the concept looks like. So everything is actually stored in a model, and the model contains all the objects. And tomorrow I'll just discuss more on that also, because it's not only model, how we create a model, what are the different type of model creation, how the model changes and everything look like. Those things I'll discuss tomorrow, right? But this is from the starting point. So Visual Studio is our development space. When I say we have to do some changes, how we start on that, all these things we'll discuss tomorrow, and when we discuss more on the models. Now I'll just open for questions. So anyone, any questions?
Regards this model concept, you will continue tomorrow also, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah, okay.
because there are a lot of things to discuss here.
Okay.
Okay, so I hope today's session was clear. So we have discussed on the, just remember, we have discussed on the three-layer architecture, the overall FNO architecture, and also how the model structure looks like. We have like understood the very basic part of it, and then we have understood how these three layers interact with each other, right? Our user interface layer, and this is where we write our metadata, all our logics, and this is our database. Right, so this is how we are going to use this, and from tomorrow onwards we'll discuss more on models, because that is a very core concept, as a key concept. If you understand that part, I mean that part well, that will help you in future, because that's the most important concept for Dynamics 365 when you start your work. Yeah, so we'll discuss that later tomorrow. Okay, I'll just stop the share.
Okay.
And
Just a minute. Yeah. If possible, can you share the tomorrow's agenda to us?
yes, tomorrow's agenda, as I explained later, so tomorrow we'll be discussing on Visual Studio, how Visual Studio model looks like, extension, overlaying, concepts of models. This will be tomorrow's agenda.
Yeah, one question. How the database is linked with the web client, which you are showing? How to find the
Yeah,
database name?
yeah. So for Dynamics 365, for the development environment, the database, if you saw that I went to the VM and I could go and access the database, because the database was stored into the cloud. Okay. So that was the concept of the database, uh, that you can access that. But for your test environment and for production environment, we do not have the access for database. For Dynamics 365 product, we do not have the access, because the SQL database is hosted on cloud. So it's a cloud SQL database for test and production environment. But for this development environment, as we go and need to do our development, so Microsoft has given us the access to access the VM virtual machine, and in that virtual machine we have the access to just go and use access the SQL Server database. So that database is stored into that VM itself, so that you can just go, right click, open the SQL Server, go and write your query, do any kind of changes and all those things. And that is, again, I remember, only available for your development environment, not for your test and production environment. So this is a big change, because in the older versions, if you understood that that was a Windows based application, and we as a customer were maintaining everything. So the production database, the test database, everything was being managed by us. So we have the complete access. But right now we do not have that access. It is with Microsoft, and those data are actually stored on cloud as a SQL cloud server. Any other
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah. Okay. Is it possible that the developed environment may have multiple database? Means my question was, if there are multiple database,
No,
how
no,
to find out it will be
no,
only
no,
one database?
no, no. Only one data.
Okay.
Extending to Mr. Ramesh's question that I got just now, so I got another question that in some scenarios, as most of the persons are already working, some scenarios, some issues will come in the production, it won't come in the development. So in that scenario, we might need to take the backup of the live data and dump in the development just to replicate. In that scenario, how we can achieve, how we can overcome that problem? Since we can't touch the production DB, right? We can't take the
Yeah.
backup.
So,
So
so yeah, that is where, yeah, I understood your question. So that is where LCS comes in. So from lifecycle services, once I show you, you'll see there is options called uh, take a production database backup. Microsoft will automatically do that for you. You do not need to do anything else. That backup will be stored, and you have to download that backup, and you can just go and apply that to your development environment. So
yeah,
you have
clear.
to
My doubt
mention,
was clear.
yeah, you have to mention which date, which time you want the database backup to, and Microsoft will create a backup for you. So yeah, one more thing, for, again, I just repeating, for the communication, uh, just drop your phone numbers and email IDs to the Visualpath admin. So he is available in the meetings. So please do that. So so that we can just communicate frequently for any purposes. So if you need any help, I'll also share my contact later. But as of now, just try to connect to the Visualpath admin and share your email and phone numbers. Anyone, do you have any other questions?
Fine for now.
Okay, I'll then take that as a no, and so tomorrow we'll connect in the same time, and we'll start with the discussion on the models and overlaying extension concept and how we can build on that concept. Right? Thanks everyone. Have a good night. We'll connect tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.